Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of April 19th, 2023 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Before we do carry on to the national anthem, I would like to make the public aware that Councillor Alexander is joining us from an airport waiting room this evening. So she is on mute, as I'm sure there's lots of background noise, but thank you very much, Councillor Alexander, for making that possible this evening. I will now ask us to rise for the singing of the national anthem. I know I was expecting a much louder. It's normally just us in here singing to ourselves. So, Councillor, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, I will move right along and I will call on John Sini of EMHA to have a delegation this evening. Yeah, you can proceed.
Good evening. My name is John Sini and I'm the president of Elmville Minor Hockey Association. I just want to be very brief this evening and take the opportunity, Your Worship, through you to council and to township staff to show our appreciation for listening to the concerns of our association and its members. I wanted to thank the councillors who reached out to myself and had open and honest conversations about the situation, and to CEO Jeff Schmidt for agreeing to meet with all user groups in order to gain our perspective. Over the course of the last couple of months, we've had many discussions regarding those concerns and look forward to having increased communication with the township as we both prepare for future planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sini. And we do appreciate the briefness is great. But at this time, and also to accommodate Councillor Alexander this evening, and for those through EMHA that are here, we will actually be pulling that agenda item up now and we will proceed with having a conversation about it. So at this time, I will ask for a mover and seconder to have the fees and charges Parks and Recreation users fee put forward. And I'll have Councillor Garwood and, oh, I'm having Clerk Ainsworth. Oh, we need to first receive Mr. Sini's delegation. So if we can have a move to receive that. Councillors Moore and Thompson, that the delegation from Mr. Sini be received. All in favor? And that has carried. And we will now move on asking for a mover and seconder for the approval of the report regarding the fees and charges, Parks and Recreation user fees. And I'm assuming that Councillor Alexander would like to move that, and seconded by Councillor Garwood. And it reads that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the fees and charges, Parks and Recreation user fees dated April 19th be received, and that Schedule F of Bylaw 2023-17 fees and charges bylaw be replaced with fees reflecting the 2022 rates, with an addition of a pavilion half-day non-sport rental and a refundable deposit as directed in the April 5th, 2023 regular meeting, and that bylaw be presented to the April 19th regular meeting of council for the consideration, and further that staff develop a Parks and Recreation user fee guideline and policy with input for user groups and residents and stakeholders. And at this time, I will have any questions or comments from members of council. Deputy Cabral and then Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I certainly appreciate the report. But I have to be honest with everybody here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I like things to be fair and equitable for all the residents of Springwater Township. Everybody has a stake in everything we do. The issue I have with this particular one, and I'm going to be voting for it, and I support it. The issue I have is that it still kind of identifies a select group to deal with. And when I take the staff report and I apply it to all of the other fees and charges that are in the original study and in the suggested fees and charges report that came out for all of the other things that we do, I can assure you right now, there were some in there that were well over 100%. During our budgeting deliberations, I brought that up. I was looking to have them all phased in. And to be quite frank, I had to, kind of convince the rest of council to do that. I'll be frank with you also to tell you that I'm not a hockey player per se. So when I looked at the arena ones, knowing that it is an expensive sport to play and that is the most expensive facility that we have, I wasn't surprised at that dollar figure. However, there were others where some folks were paying several $100s and would be paying over $1,000. So I am in favor of freezing them because according to the staff report, there was certain things that were missed, certain things that weren't done. However, in all fairness to everybody else, I am going to ask for an amendment that all of the other schedules in the fees and charges study also be frozen at the rate that was in place prior to it coming forward, which would be 2022. And that, I think, is the only way that we can actually be fair and equitable to all the residents of Springwater Township. And then staff can do the same thing for all of those other fees and charges that they were looking at. In the same fashion, they're going to be doing it for Elmville Minor Hockey, the Figure Skating Club, and the other users who utilize the arena. I think it's important for us to be transparent. And I think it's important for us to, when we recognize there's been an error, to correct it. Council itself went by what the fees and charges study presented and what staff information was made available to us. However, seeing as there's certainly some concerns with respect to the fees and charges for the arena, I am proposing that the entire fees and charges study for 2022 be frozen and that we move forward in the same fashion with it as we are with the fees and studies for the rec department. So that is the amendment I would like to put on the table.
Deputy Cabral, with your indulgence, before we do seek a seconder for that, if I can go to the rest of the members of council to address the motion on the table. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I had prepared something, but the deputy mayor pretty much took most of what I was going to say. So I'm glad that he did. I'm glad he did. But I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Sini, for your presentation this evening. And I wanted to thank Elmville Minor Hockey and the other user groups that have been connecting with myself, and I know my council colleagues as well over the past few weeks in relation to the fees and charges study. I'm a true believer that the only way we can move forward in an effective manner is by listening and learning, and as the deputy mayor mentioned, admitting when maybe we could do better next time around. I absolutely agree with staff's recommendation in regards to freezing parks and recreation user fees until a full season in which the Elmville Arena has not encountered significant impacts from the pandemic, and then that can be examined. So thank you again, Mr. Sini, for being here. And of course, I'm absolutely supportive of the recommendation put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. Councillor Fisher.
I completely agree with Deputy Mayor Cabral, and I agree with freezing them for that period of time. I would, however, like to propose a friendly amendment since we are dipping back into the budget and this will affect taxpayers. I'd like to propose the elimination of certain programs from the budget, elimination of the farmers market manager, economic development officer, and pushing off the snowplow operators until November. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And before I do go back to the first amendment, the second amendment, Councillor Alexander did send in comment, and the clerk will read Councillor Alexander's comment so that we don't have the airport background noise. So Clerk Ainsworth does have Councillor Alexander's comments here.
Thank you. So on behalf of Councillor Alexander, she writes, I'd like to thank John Cini for stepping up on behalf of all the user groups of the Elmvale Arena. I would also like to apologize. It is not okay that a user group has to take a deep dive into a comprehensive study and bring forward the inconsistencies of the report. I fully own my part of this, and I think the township has to as well. That being said, I am happy that we are able to collaborate moving forward with this in a fair manner.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, and through you to Clerk Councillor Alexander. Thank you for the comments. Before we do move to the First Amendment, I would also like to say thank you to Mr. Cini and the Elmvale Minor Hockey Group. I've had many lengthy conversations, and I would also like to apologize for my assumptions. And we know what happens when you assume things, and that has been made evident here. I did assume that there was public consultation involved, and I would like to apologize and thank you for bringing that forward. I would also like to thank our staff who have been completely receptive to our user groups. I think the relationship between our staff, our residents, our user groups, and our council will be strengthened by this. So I do like the path forward. And at this time, I will ask for a seconder for Deputy Cabral's motion or amendment that was to have all user groups be. It actually, Deputy Cabral, if you could just repeat that for us. And I do have seconder from Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, my motion is basically to take the entire fees and charges study and put it under the same umbrella, the same format as the parks and recreational fees. They're going to be basically held at 2022 rates. All of the charges in the fees and charges study to be frozen at 2022 rates until the same process being applied to the fees for the arena, and that respect can be applied to all other fees and studies that were proposed to be increased.
Thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
Thank you. Yes. And I did have Councillor Garwood did second that, and I will turn to staff if there's any comment on financial implications or if there's anything at this time you would like. And I do have Director Radigan, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to members of council. Sorry, there we
Thank
are.
you. Thank you.
There will be financial implications. I believe the program change that was included as part of the fees and charges study, if we are looking at all the schedules, would be a reduction of about $205,000 to the 2023 budget, which is slightly over a 1% increase. The recommendation coming from the report is specifically related to Schedule F. That is the area that those fees are quite sensitive to large increases. From a financial perspective, although it did look like a 16% increase, it was a larger increase to the user groups. We did hold a public meeting for the building portion of the fees. And all other areas are not as volatile, I would say, in terms of the rate increases. It is largely the parks and recreation fees that I would recommend always ensuring we do consult with the user groups just to see their side, because they are quite sensitive to large increases. And the goal is not to price them out of the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I was actually going to open the floor, pointing down there to Councillor Fisher. However, I am aware of that. And whether it's for 30 people or 2 people over the course of a year, if we're going to look at the fees and charges that we are charging for one particular group because we've made some errors, it only makes sense to me, to be fair to everybody in the township, that every single fee gets looked at in the same fashion, because although we may have done it for certain fees, maybe with respect to maybe water and wastewater, I don't know which ones they were. Think it would be fair to say that certainly not all of the schedules were addressed in the same fashion. So I stand by my motion. And with respect to the $200,000+, you're absolutely 100% correct. I think, and I stand to be corrected, and I'll let it go to Councillor Fisher with respect to that, but I think that's what he's trying to mitigate.
Thank you. I will turn to Councillor Fisher.
Absolutely correct. Trying to mitigate $205,000 being forced back on the taxpayer. These program changes were based upon user fees collected from these groups. So in order to mitigate this expense, I do once again propose the elimination of those program changes, Elmvale Farmers Market Manager, Economic Development Officer, and pushing off these snowplow drivers until November before the snow flies.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And I will be dealing with the two amendments separately. The first one that's on the floor now, and I do have CO Schmidt before we move.
Thank you, Mayor Coggins, for you two members of council. So on the proposed motion by Councillor Fisher, I'd just like to indicate that the specifically to the Elmvale Farmers Market, we have just recently offered and the individual has accepted the position. So we would be in a position to have to go back to that individual and let them know that council has made a change if this is the direction that council gives tonight.
Thank you. And I would like to deal with the amendment that is on the floor because I do believe that procedurally what's being proposed by Councillor Fisher would be a reconsideration and not a friendly amendment this evening, as those are, each one of those items was a specific budget item. So we would have to reconsider each of those individually. So that would be something that could be tabled at a different time, but I will just deal with what Deputy Cabral has on the floor and then move to Clerk Ainsworth for comment, or unless you have comment at this time. No? And Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Can the clerk please reread what the amended motion is that the deputy mayor is bringing forth so there can be clarification? Thank you.
Thank you. And Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. What's been drafted is that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add, and that all other fees and charges schedules included in bylaw 2023-017 be amended to reflect the 2022 rates, to follow the same review process as the Parks and Recreation fees. The other thing that would need to change is in the main motion, it states that the bylaw be presented at this evening's meeting. That wouldn't be possible. So that would be changed to the May 3rd meeting.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. And at this time, I do see CBO Verstraeten has come online. So CBO Verstraeten.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Coughlin. To change the building fees, we'd have to hold a public meeting and give notice as well. So I'd ask that the building fees be left out of the motion if I could.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think it's important for the folks that are here because you're going to hear me kind of backpedal a little bit here. The building fees really were rather fairly insignificant as far as increases in that was concerned, because the building department tends to operate on a cost recovery basis. So they're continually monitoring what they're spending and what they need to take in to offset it. So for the building fees, I don't know what the maximum would have been, but they were all in the neighborhood of like 2 to 5%. And correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Director Radigan. I think that was roughly it, 2 to 5, maybe 6% at the top end for the building fees. And as I said, they've always been on a cost recovery basis. So they're always monitoring what it costs them and what they need to charge. So when the study went forward, there's not a doubt in my mind that they were pretty close to being on the money anyway. Whereas if you look at the fees and charges for other things, including the arena, there were some very significant and substantial increases there that had not been accounted for a long period of time. So I'm happy to include that amendment as long as council's okay with it as well.
Thank you, Deputy Corral. When it comes to recreation as a whole, I do see the equity in providing this across a recreation board. However, when it does come to our water and wastewater and our building and fees, we do have a water and wastewater study that is on a program to ensure that there is sustainable reserves in place, that we are billing out at a sustainable rate. So pushing back a year for our water and wastewater, if that was included in this, I feel like we're not. I'm getting in Director Radigan.
I apologize. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin. The water and wastewater fee study was approved as part of the 2023 budget, and we will be proceeding with doing a study, which does include extensive public consultation. That was excluded. That's not part of the fees.
It's
and
not part
charges
of
study.
Schedule 7. Oh, correct. Okay, thank you. So for clarification then, Deputy Cabral, when we're speaking this evening, aside from if we were to remove the building rates out of that, what other departments would be impacted by this?
The only one I'm suggesting be removed based on
CV over Stratton.
CVO for Stratton would be the building permits and the building side of things that have already always been based on cost recovery. Everything else in there, I'm including that.
All right, we do have that in front of us. And CEO Schmidt, any final comment before we do go for the vote?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. On behalf of staff, I would just like to also apologize to the user groups for the oversight that staff had as it related to this particular section. And I would just say that my comments are more specific to the Parks and Rec user fees. There was a note within the comprehensive report that did indicate that the consultant did recommend that staff consider the phasing in of these fees due to their intimate knowledge and I guess expertise and partnerships with the user groups. As for the other fees that are contained within the comprehensive study, again, you have financial administrative type fees, you have planning fees. So again, I would suggest considering keeping the planning fees as is. Development is happening in the community, and we want to make sure that taxpayers are not having to pick up any additional costs as it relates to planning fees. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. And through you, Deputy Cabral, is there an opportunity then to have the fees and charges for Parks and Recreation frozen and maintaining the increases for the other departments?
Mayor Coughlin, my position stands, I think, to be fair to everybody and equitably to everybody. I can certainly understand the building department, but of course, they have always operated on a cost recovery basis. So their fees are actually quite in line with where they should be. So no, I'm not prepared to change anything further. It's just a matter of someone's going to come down the road and say, hey, you know what? Council froze the ones for Parks and Recreation. I'm doing a consult with the building department that used to cost a couple of $100 and now I have to pay $1,000. What's going on? You know, so fair is fair. And that's where I'm at here, folks. And I hope you understand it. I suspect some of you are taxpayers and you'd like to all be treated fairly and equitably. So that's where I'm at, and I'm going to stay with that, please. And I'd like the motion to go forward.
Thank you. We do have Deputy Cabral's motion on the table, seconded by Councillor Garwood. Council, is there any further discussion on the amendment put forward? And seeing none, I will call the vote.
I'll ask for a recorded vote, please.
Clerk Ainsworth, recorded vote on the amendment.
Thank you. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood,
Yes.
Councillor Alexander,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Council, we now have an amended motion before us. And if there's no further discussion, I can, oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Fisher. At this time, I can go to Clerk Ainsworth with the comments from Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. In regards to the three positions that you mentioned, it would be separate reconsiderations for each one as they were already dealt with through council. A reconsideration can only be tabled when no other motion is on the table. So this user fee item would need to be dealt with, and then you can propose reconsiderations. There are semantics to the requirements and conditions of what qualifies for a reconsideration. We would need to pause so that I can confer with staff because something cannot be reconsidered if an action has been taken that can't be reversed. So I just need to see where the three positions are to be able to determine whether a reconsideration can take place, and then I can advise further. But without some time, I would need that time, unfortunately, to confer with staff. My apologies, 4 positions.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Understanding now that the reconsiderations could not be brought forward at this time, we do have the motion for the fees and charges before us. Council, is there any further discussion before we vote on the motion as amended? And seeing none, all in favor? And that motion has carried. Thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate you being here this evening. Councillor Fisher, we can recess now, or we can continue with the delegations that are before us and provide an opportunity after. Okay, at this time, I will call for a short recess as Councillor Fisher has asked for reconsideration to be put forward on the table. This was not on the table and I did just openly debate this. Councillor Fisher, I do apologize. We needed a mover and seconder. I do apologize to council for having made comment when this was not actually on the floor. At this time, as there is no motions on the floor, this would be an opportunity for a member of council to present a reconsideration.
I would like to propose a reconsideration for the Elmvale's Farmers Market position.
And Councillor Fisher, we just require a seconder for that. And seconded by Deputy Cabral. Clerk Ainsworth, do you have the original motion before us? And at this time, I will turn to CAO Schmidt to indicate the process, because from what I'm learning in the last 5 minutes, is it depends on how far along that is. So I'd just like to know at what stage we are for that position.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And to the clerk, it's a reconsideration. Does it not have to be voted on first before we can discuss it?
That head nod means yes, you are correct. My apologies. Clerk Ainsworth?
We can clarify whether the motion can be reconsidered at this point.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, for clarifying. Mayor Coughlin, members of council, the Economic Development Assistant, maybe better known as the Elmvale Farmers Market Assistant, that position has been offered and the individual has accepted. So that individual is scheduled to start May 1st with the organization. If council chooses to not proceed in that fashion, the individual that's being secured will be in jeopardy of not graduating this year as they're a co-op student.
Clerk Ainsworth, the reconsideration, in your opinion, could be tabled? Sorry. And again, I do apologize to members of the public. I'm sorry that we are putting you through this. This is just not something I'm familiar with. What I'm learning this evening is that in order for something to be reconsidered, it can only be reconsidered to a specific point. And from at that point, we have hired this person there to start. So is this a position we can reconsider?
Thank you. As the CAO mentioned, there are implications to a person who has signed an employment agreement with the township should council reconsider this position. It would be a decision of council to decide whether they would like to take that step to reconsider the position.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Councillor Fisher, seconded by Deputy Cabral, to reconsider the Economic Development Officer Assistant and Market Supervisor reconsideration. All those in favor? Right. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm confused a little bit. We have an Economic Development Officer. That was a separate position from the Farmers Market position. Have they morphed? Have they become one?
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, so there's an Economic Development Officer, which is a permanent full-time position. And then there's the seasonal Economic Development Assistant / Elmvale Farmers Market position, which is the item that we're talking about specifically right now. And that position has been offered, has been accepted. In partnership with Georgian College, we've secured a co-op student. And that individual, if council so chooses to not move forward with this, that individual would not be able to fulfill their co-op responsibilities and hence not be able to graduate this year.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I'll go over the process for council. So at this time, Councillor Fisher has requested a reconsideration of the Economic Development Assistant, correct? The council would be voting on whether that position is brought back to the table for debate and voting again. So if council would like to reopen that position for debate, they would vote in favor of the reconsideration. If they do not want to open up that position for debate, they would vote against the reconsideration. If the reconsideration is supported with the majority of council, then the motion on the table would be that an economic development assistant be approved or be pursued in 2023. And full debate would be opened back up. Council could ask questions and then vote yes to have that position secured or vote no to have that position removed.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Councillor Fisher, if you would let this one go till the end of the debate or the end. And I'm just suggesting that maybe the Economic Development Officer be the one that's reconsidered first, if that's agreeable to you, Councillor Fisher.
Councillor Fisher, your microphone.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, to the end of the reconsiderations? That's fine.
So Councillor Fisher, you have a second reconsideration.
I would like to reconsider the hiring of the Economic Development Officer.
And you have a seconder for that? Deputy Cabral? Council, we have reconsideration for the Economic Development Officers put forward by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Deputy Cabral. All those in favor of the reconsideration? And that has carried. As Clerk Ainsworth pulls this forward, I will go to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Radigan. Can we please keep track of the budget implications for each position again? I think we're trying to get to about 210,000. Thank you.
While Clerk Ainsworth is pulling that forward, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. In addition to Councillor Moore's comment, can we get the specific, like what that dollar amount implication is for the Economic Development Officer role? So what that dollar amount would cost yearly, please?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Garwood. The Economic Development Officer was approved in the budget for $100,908. The farmers market, I'm sorry, I'm just having to look. The farmers market assistant was at a net tax cost of $33,200. And I believe there is also a consideration for the 2 snowplow drivers, which were budgeted for a 10-month period. And that cost is $132,986. And I believe that was being paid for through growth and not through the tax levy. So that would not be a savings. Thank you.
So we have program change number 6, the Economic Development Officer. And that has been brought forward, reconsidered. I would need now a mover, so moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded again. And then calling for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Council, is there any discussion as this has now been tabled? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I just want to point out this was deliberated. We know all about it. I don't think it's necessary for us to relive the entire episode. I think it's just a matter of making a decision on whether this position goes forward or not. So I would just assume and prefer that we just move along here.
Counselor Garwood.
Just 2 points. One, if the clerk could just again clarify as to what the vote will be on, and 2, I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. So what council would be voting on is the program change originally proposed through the budget process for the economic development officer. So that would be for the economic development officer to be included in the 23-24 budget. If council would like to see this position continue and be pursued, they would vote in favor of the motion. If council would like to see this position eliminated and removed from the budget, they would vote against the motion.
Counselor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to CAO Schmidt. Is it possible, do we have Manager DeVried on the line at all? No. Are you in contact with? Okay. I'm just, before we go through this process, what positions have been filled or not filled?
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, in our discussion when we recessed, I contacted Manager DeVried along with our Director Radigan. And there's 3 positions that have been secured. One is the fire position, the fire education position, the dev assistant position that we just spoke of for the farmers market, as well as the parks and facility operator position. All of the remaining positions are currently in the recruitment cycle, and offers have yet to be provided, if you will. So we still have interviews are being conducted and or in the process of being set up, but no offers have been officially provided to any individuals.
Follow on.
It's so difficult to put you on the spot like this, I realize. But I don't remember all of the positions that are still outstanding. So could I get a quick recap, please?
I will go to CEO Schmidt and then Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to members of council. So just looking at the report from February 15th, we had a GIS coordinator for IT. We had a fire prevention officer, public educator, which is the one that has been secured. We had the economic development officer. We had a junior planner. However, that position was not funded through taxation. We had the 2 roads and fleet equipment positions that have just been spoken of. Again, no tax impact, funded through growth. We had the roads and fleet engineering technologist, which was approximately $56,944 funded at taxation. We had the building maintenance technician, which again, not funded at taxation. The parks and facility operator, which I spoke of, which were in the that position has been secured. And I believe that is, oh, sorry, the economic development assistant farmers market, which again, I spoke of.
Thank you. And Director Radigan.
That is correct. I was looking at the same list. I just wanted to ensure that we had, well, thank you.
Follow on, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So what I see as options then are the economic development officer, the GIS coordinator, engineering technologist. That's about it. Is that correct?
Through you to CEO Schmidt. Confirmation on the positions. Are those the 3 positions that have yet to be filled?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. Just to clarify, those are the 3 positions that are available that were funded through taxation.
Correct.
There are other positions that, as I mentioned, have yet to be filled, but were not funded through taxation.
Perfect. Thank you. Can I follow on? Sorry. So then I would just ask, maybe Councillor Fisher could relook at those positions that you had put forward initially, and then amend those to those 3 that CEO Schmidt just spoke of.
Right.
Councillor Fisher.
Economic Development Officer, GIS Coordinator, and Road and Fleet was paid for by growth. Right, still the farmer's market and some, my apologies, engineering technologists as well.
Thank you. And and before we do go back to staff, I would just like to reiterate what was said earlier. I understand that council has identified and accrued a cost this evening of $200,000, which is significant increase to our tax base. Council sitting here trying to go back and forth through positions. While we hope that we have an understanding of how they will impact the day-to-day operations of the corporation. I myself would hope that council would be amendable to put this back to staff and have staff come forward to us at a subsequent meeting with the cost savings. Whether it's from things that we may have not have thought of. I don't know what our first quarter surplus is looking like. I don't fully understand, but there may be other opportunities for cost savings whereby we don't have to cut staff. I was incredibly proud of the budget that we put forward. I think that we have identified staffing shortages and customer service. We've had many members of the public come to us, and it's not just about the roads not being plowed. It's about economic development. I don't want to sit here and reactively cut something from our budget that we had, as Deputy Cabral said, lengthy discussions and fulsome discussions, and I thought beneficial discussions. So while we do have a reconsideration on the floor this evening, again, I would like to put forward that while I fully respect Councillor Fisher's position and that of council this evening, where we need to rectify this. We do have a deficit now of $200,000, but I don't know that decision needs to be made hastily in this moment. I think that this can be put forward to staff. They can come back to us and we can make an informed decision at a later date. Councillor Fisher.
As it pertains to the Economic Development Officer and the farmers market, I've actually put quite a bit of thought into it. Neither position needs to be filled right now or at all. I believe that they make major impacts to the taxpayer, and I think they have minimal, if any, benefit. So particularly on those two, I would like to move ahead with it tonight. I don't think it's a hasty decision when it comes to those two positions. Thank you.
Understanding that there is no appetite to put this forward, Councillor Fisher does have a reconsideration that was supported by council. That is on the table. Members of council, there has been a request for a recorded vote. Is there any further discussion? The position before us this evening is the program change number 6, our Economic Development Officer. Is there any further discussion from council? Any further input from staff? And seeing none, I will then move to Clerk Ainsworth for the recorded vote.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, the motion on the table is that program change PC number 6, Economic Development Officer, be included in the 23-24 budget. So if council would like to see the position continue, they would vote yes. If they would like to see the position removed, you would vote no. Any questions regarding the motion? When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
Yes.
Councillor Alexander.
No.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Fisher.
No.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
No.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That is a 4-3 vote. The motion is lost.
If there's nothing further. Councillor Fisher.
I'd like to propose the cancellation of the GIS coordinator. And if I could also get the economic impact of that cancellation.
The reconsideration needs to be voted on first. Councillor Fisher has proposed a reconsideration of the GIS coordinator position. And I need a seconder for that, please. Councillor Moore. There's no discussion to be had on reconsiderations. Council, at this time, we are voting to have a discussion on a reconsideration. The no recorded vote has been called. Council, all those in favor of reconsidering the GIS coordinator position? And that has carried. At this time, I will require a mover and seconder to have the GIS program change put forward for discussion. Moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Deputy, I should have just moved back and said there's no seconder. Deputy Cabral, seconded by Deputy Cabral. This motion is now before us and council is open for discussion.
If I could get the economic impact of this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher, and through you to Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. $24,893 of that position is funded through the growth supplementary taxation. $74,679 is funded through taxation. So there would be a surplus of the 24,000 sitting in growth as a result if we did choose the GIS coordinator position.
Councillor Fisher.
I would like to still move ahead with the reconsideration.
And just as Councillor Fisher chooses to move ahead with the reconsideration, I would also like to make it known again that I do feel that these are decisions that should be made with much information and staff input, time and consideration. Again, I was extremely excited about the budget that came forward and us moving the corporation forward, building it to a point where we're able to accommodate the needs of our residents. These positions, in my opinion, should not just be cut due to an oversight in a fees and charges study. This seems, in my opinion, reactionary. I will not be supporting this reconsideration. I would also still be supporting the position as it moves forward. Councillor Fisher.
The budget that we voted on, I did not disagree with it, and to a large extent, I was proud of it. However, I think a material fact has changed to the tune of $205,000 tonight, and to simply move ahead and force that onto taxpayers, I can't agree with it. So I do agree with you, but unfortunately, I do feel that there needs to be some atonement and accountability to the taxpayer. That's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. And I do agree that atonement or things that happen, and I will agree that I myself had oversight in the fees and charges. I definitely I made a mistake in not giving it the diligence that it deserved. I thought there'd be an opportunity for council to work forward. Things change. We have culverts that are wrapped. We have road shoulders that collapse. We incur costs throughout a year well in surpass of $200,000. We also have surpluses on an annual basis in the tune of millions of dollars. So to be making a decision tonight without knowing the full impact, to me, it's just not making a sound. It feels reactive to something that had happened 8 minutes ago. I will move to Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. As the reconsiderations continue to come forward, I'm going to continue to ask for a recorded vote.
Deputy Cabral.
No comment.
Is there any further comments from council or member staff? And seeing none, we do have a recorded vote requested from Councillor Garwood, and that is on the reconsideration of our GIS coordinator position, program change number 2. Council, that is before us, and I will return to Clerk Ainsworth for the recorded vote, please.
Thank you. And again, just to clarify, a vote in favor of the motion is to support the position. A vote against the motion is to remove the position. When I call your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
Yes.
Councillor Alexander.
No.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Fisher.
No.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
No.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Yes,
That motion is lost.
thank you. As the remaining two positions suggested earlier are not from taxation, Councillor Fisher, will you be moving forward with a reconsideration on those, or understanding that Councillor Alexander is past her time here? I'm not sure what you would.
If I can just ask Director Radigan, how much with the two positions, and I apologize for not keeping track, have we saved this evening?
Thank you, Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. The total that we were looking for was $205,484. Removing program change number 6 would remove $100,908, leaving a subtotal of $104,576. Removing program change number 2, the GIS coordinator, for $99,572 would result in a remaining amount of $5,004.
Thank you, Director Radigan, and understanding that the building fees and charges were removed from that 200 and whatever thousand would actually have been less.
Sorry, I apologize. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the amount that you are looking for is the 205, and we have come up with 200,000 of it.
Thank you. And is council satisfied with the $5,000 deficit, or will we be moving forward with alternate positions? Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Director Radigan. When we look at removing the nominal loss attributable, I would suggest to the building department, I think we're in pretty good stead as we stand now. And the only other comment I'd like to make is that these are positions that don't currently exist. So to turn around and take away something else that currently is in play, or a service that we're currently providing, I think does not make sense. I think this is the most prudent way to alleviate the $200,000 deficit. And I have to say that I think Councillor Fisher made a good move by suggesting it. That's my thoughts on it. They don't exist. We're not impacting anybody who's already here.
Thank you. And before I do go to members of council, Director Gaddig, is there an opportunity, and I do apologize for not providing or asking this in advance of the meeting, but understanding that on a quarterly or monthly basis, we do tally a surplus. So we have just removed positions from the municipality. If we had have looked to a surplus rather than positions that we felt our residents needed months ago, what is our current surplus with the municipality?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to the rest of the members of council. We currently don't have the running tally for the current year surplus. We are finishing up our 2022 audit and year end. It is indicating that we are in a surplus position. As a result of not hiring the majority of these positions, although they were budgeted at 10 months, you will see savings for an additional month for the majority, or an additional 2 months. So you would already be seeing a surplus for the first quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Radigan. And Clerk Ainsworth. Oh, Councillor Fisher. Sorry, Clerk Ainsworth had just pointed. I tend to look this way a lot, so I thought maybe I missed you. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to comment that I'm not a believer in looking down the pipe at what might be taxation down the road. I don't think that's a good way to budget. The budget we're talking about had a deficit of $200,000. Some of the monies that were utilized to offset the budget were the ones that Mayor Coughlin's actually talking about, money that we don't have in hand that we're anticipating we're going to get down the road. But I'm not one to buy stuff on credit if I can avoid it. And our township's in pretty good stead financially. I'd like to see it stay that way. And, you know, I have to respect the taxpayer dollars, and that's the bottom line. We need to pay for the core services that we require and to treat our residents with respect when we're spending those dollars. So I don't like reaching into tomorrow to pay for something today.
I'm going to call decorum on myself and not let myself speak, and I will move CEO Schmidt does have his hand up, and I then have Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just wanted to make a comment on the Deputy Mayor's comment about these positions not existing. You may recall, Deputy Mayor and members of council did approve these positions on February 15th of this year. And that gave direction to staff to add these positions to our complement and hence start the recruitment cycle. All of these positions are in the recruitment cycle, and as mentioned earlier, a few of them have been secured. The other positions are still in the recruitment cycle. Individuals have applied to the township. Interviews have been planned for some of these positions. Now we're in a position we have to go back to these individuals to advise them that we're no longer hiring these positions. Recruitment is a tough process already to grab individuals that are interested in coming to the municipality. So to me, it does not provide Springwater a good opportunity moving forward from a recruitment standpoint. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you. And Councillor Fisher.
Sorry, my cell phone. Upon reevaluation, we're coming very close to the amount with the 2 positions of elimination. I'm willing to reconsider taking a look at the farmers market position and not looking for a reconsideration there based upon the fact that we have hired a student. I think if it does affect their co-op and we are using them purely on a seasonal basis to allow them to graduate, I can not move ahead with that one, and the 2 positions we've eliminated will suffice.
Thank you. And before I go to Councillor Garwood, and we will move on to our delegation from EDHS here shortly, but I guess my final comment would just be that whether or not council made this decision this evening, or whether this council made a decision at our subsequent meeting, it would have provided all members of council with an opportunity to be fully informed. Also, putting this on our staff at the 11th hour or the 1 yard line, I don't feel that it was entirely necessary this evening. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. While I'm disappointed to see 2 positions that council agreed upon just a few months ago now be removed from the position complement, I am pleased to hear that Councillor Fisher has pulled the reconsideration in regards to the farmers market position. As many folks here know, the farmers market is extremely important. It's not also just based upon the individual that has been hired. I like to think that if the position hadn't had an individual in it, we would still seek its value and importance in our community, as the farmers market in the Elmville community and the Springwater community is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to our deputation delegation, and I will now call upon EDHS and our Gender and Sexual Diversity Club to present a delegation regarding the Elmville Rainbow Crosswalk presentation. Please come on forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for receiving us tonight. My name is Greg Davidson. I'm a teacher at Elmville District High School. I'd like to first start out by thanking the community support that has come this evening. It is important to our students. At this time, I would like to turn the delegation over to the students as I take a seat away from the mic.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And please begin.
We are the members of Elmville District High School's Gender and Sexuality Diversity Club.
We present this check for $1,000 to the Township of Springwater towards a rainbow crosswalk.
We look forward to its installation in front of the Springwater Library in Elmville.
And should there be any questions at this time, Council?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. This is very exciting. I just have to do a procedural mover and seconder to get it on the floor so that council can ask questions. So may I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation this evening? I have Councillor Thompson and Moore. And Council, is there any questions or comments? I have Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First of all, I'd like to thank the entire group here today, the EDHS Gender and Sexual Diversity Club, for their delegation today, and for taking time a few weeks ago to meet with the mayor and I and enlighten us in regards to your activities in the high school. It was absolutely incredible. I'm not speaking for the mayor, but just for myself, I learned a lot that day, and it was nice to walk the halls of EDHS again. So I'm very impressed with this group. I understand there's a check presentation here and the $1,000 that has been raised for the installation of the rainbow crosswalk on Queen Street in Elmville. And of course, I fully support this initiative, and thank you again for taking time out of your evening and sitting through the last hour and a bit. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to learning more.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral, and then Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just a little bit confused, I guess, and I have to apologize because this did come up last year. And there was a delegation regarding the rainbow sidewalk, and there were some comments made at the time, and we were presented with some options, and we actually, as a council, asked staff to go back and return with a report on what it would actually cost to put the rainbow sidewalk in place. And there was also discussion about putting a rainbow sidewalk right here. We're talking about the rainbow crossing in Elmville. And I have had a conversation with Mr. Davidson too. And I just I guess I'm a little bit lost because there's a $1,000 check being presented. But when I looked back at the motion to which council agreed back in August, there was a figure of, I guess, between $7,000 and $9,000, and the motion that was passed at that time was that 50% would be paid by township and 50% would be raised by the students. So I'm kind of at a loss as to what's going on as far as, is this kind of like the first $1,000 that's coming towards council towards the putting into place the rainbow sidewalk? I just don't know. So yeah, I'm a bit confused because it's already kind of been agreed to, and there were certain things put into place, and council made a motion last August to actually move forward with it. So yeah, I'm kind of stuck on this. So that's my question, I guess, is.
I'm unclear on your question, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry.
You've stated that you're confused.
I'm
Can you frame your
confused.
question with clarity, please?
And not a problem. I'm just actually going to turn to CO Schmidt for the cost of the sidewalk at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to members of council. I will start, and maybe I may defer to our manager, Dean, here, who's been leading this charge. My understanding is that the cost of the crosswalk is in the range of $3,000 to $4,000. And that is the revised quote that we've got. And that's the expected cost that the township would incur for this, not the $9,000 or $10,000 that was originally discussed back in previously.
Thank you, Manager Devine. And any further comment?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the deputy mayor. So the resolution last year, when the report was presented to council, there was 3 different options of flags that were presented. And one was the progressive flag. And then there was 2 additional options of flags. So the one that was approved was a more ladder style flag. So the 6 different colors, black pavement markings in between.
I have to, sorry, interrupt you. I have no idea what a flag is. I'm thinking that you're talking about the design that's going to be put on the sidewalk. It's still going to be a crosswalk. And I think the one you're speaking of is the ladder design.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, correct. The ladder design that will be installed on the crosswalk. So the higher figure that was estimated through reaching out to contractors in the report last year was for the progressive, what they call the progressive sign that would have been installed on the crosswalk. So the updated quotes that were received for the materials, for the thermoplastic materials for the ladder flag are $1,017. And then there is 2 different options to install that. One would be through staff installing it. One would be through contractor installing it. So the remaining difference would be to either $2,500 or $3,500.
Thank you, Manager Dean and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I have to look back at the original motion that was 50%. So I would respectfully request that maybe we hold off on the actual check presentation until staff can give us an exact number so that we can comply with the original motion. I hope you're understanding of that. It seems that maybe staff should have presented additional information to council prior to you folks coming in and making a delegation. I know that my conversation with Mr. Davidson, as you recall, I actually offered to come and help do some fundraising, and we never did meet again on that point. But it seems to me that it's just not a whole lot of difference between what Manager Dean has provided and what you folks have in hand. However, I have to look back at the motion that was in place that still exists right now. So I really kind of think that it might be premature to give us a check for $1,000 until we know exactly where we stand on this 50% point. So I would actually ask that this be deferred until that happens.
Thank you, Deputy Corral. I do see the hands. I'm just trying to maneuver a conversation. Again, I would like to thank you for being here this evening. Congratulations on raising $1,000. As a mom who is quite often asked to be part of fundraisers, I know how much effort goes into that. Understanding that the crosswalk cost for materials is slightly over $1,000. And the remaining costs that would be accrued would be through our staff. If we choose not to go to a third party. I understand that this isn't exactly 50%, but as we just moved through, we just sat through reconsiderations whereby there was no new information or further information coming from staff. I don't feel that we need to defer this to staff. We have a group of individuals before us, and I will get to Mr. Davidson shortly. I did see hands to my left. I saw Councillor Fisher, and any other members before I go back to the presenter, Councillor Fisher?
I agree. I would like to stick to the original motion of 50%, and I would also like to know exactly how much it would cost before we accept any checks. As much as I think it's great that you've raised $1,000, congratulations. I'd like to know exactly what the costs are, and don't see it as a down payment.
Thank you. Understand that the conversation before us has gone to a monetary value. If I can get at this point before moving to a deferral, Manager Dean, what would be the overall, if we were to do this with our in-house staff, the overall costs associated with the project?
If GM Ramdeo is on the line, I am going to defer to him as he did run some additional numbers this morning with our roads and fleet department.
Thank you, and I'll go to GM Ramdeo.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to all of council. If we were to do it with our own staff, it'll be 3 staff for a day, which base cost with benefits would likely be around not $1,000, just over $1,000 in staff costs, in addition to the material costs of $1,020. So you're looking at about $2,100 in total, $2,200 in total.
And thank you. And while this is new information to members of council this evening on the costs associated, to me, I'm seeing that this, with the resolution before us of a 50% cost, and understanding that we went with one of 3 options. I do see that the resolution before us has been fulfilled by EDHS. I'm curious why we would defer this project if everything's in place and we're able to move forward with it. I will move to Mr. Davidson, who's had his hand politely up there, and my apologies, and I'll come back to council.
Yeah. I'm not versed on all the legalities of what a proper crosswalk is to look like, but I use the crosswalk. There's no paint there. So would council consider the fact that a regular paint job is needed as part of their cost understanding? That would be good. And with regards to the motion, we came as a delegate and a delegation, and the number was always $1,000 that we could raise for this position. The students have worked and represented their community. They've been complimented by people from within and without their community for not only raising the money, but you know, for the first time in the entire history of the Fall Fair, having a presence. So, you know, and at no time was that motion communicated to me. So I don't know, you know, much about municipal politics, but we came, you know, in good faith. I said we could do $1,000. We have $1,000 here for you. We were unaware of a motion of 50% of the cost. And yes, Mayor, through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor, we did have that conversation, but again, I stood with $1,000. That's the skin, and that's the skin we have in the game.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Thompson as he hasn't had an opportunity this evening, and then I will come back. Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to CEO Schmidt, I don't know whether this would be appropriate or not, but I'm fully supportive of this, and I would personally be happy to make up the difference of the 50%.
You stole my thunder. Stole my thunder.
If that were to please council, so that we can move forward with this project and support this initiative.
I really shouldn't have gone to Councillor Thompson first. I did have conversations earlier today with members of the public and local businesses that are fully in support and behind you. So thank you so much. And myself, we could get into semantics of resolutions. This isn't about municipal politics. This is about a group of kids who have come together and done something progressive and great in our community. And I just want to thank you for championing that. I think that if there is an opportunity where there is a shortfall and we do need to come up with something, we all know where Councillor Thompson lives. So we can come back at this time. And Deputy Cabral, I do see your hand and thank you for that. And there has been opportunities. I'm excited to take a picture. I'm excited to celebrate this. And as we do that, Deputy Cabral, if there's any comment.
Just a quick one. I don't want anybody to get the impression that I don't think you did great work. I'm just trying to explain why I was a little bit surprised that we were having this delegation. If staff had provided us with the updated information prior to, we wouldn't have been surprised. So it's kind of like cart before the horse type of deal. However, when it comes down to the motion, and I do applaud Councillor Thompson, I would have been prepared to do the same thing because it's only a matter of a few dollars. The drawback here, folks, is that when council makes a motion and it says 50%, that's pretty much the way it has to go. We're not really in a position to be flexible, even though we love what you're doing and how hard you've worked. The fact is that the motion stipulated a certain thing. So that's the only way, but no, I'm fine with it. I just wish it had been presented a little bit differently. And then maybe I wouldn't have turned out to be quite the bad guy some of you might think I am, because I'm not.
Thank you. And I will, before we go to the final comment, is that while there is a resolution before council, much like the resolutions of positions that were hired, council can always reconsider as you sat through this evening decisions of council. So if there's no further or new information, Councillor Garwood, new information, I do apologize for trying to cut this short, but thank you again, and I will call the vote. Council, before us, we have that the presentation from the Elmvale District High School Gender and Sexual Diversity Club regarding the Elmvale Rainbow Crosswalk presentation of donation be received. All those in favor? And that has carried. And this is where we get under. I was wanting like a really, no, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think we have what you expected.
I would just like, if we could do a formal picture and if there's members of the community that would like to be part, more than welcome to come on
Well,
up.
most certainly, Bill. To have broader community as part of the picture.
I'm gonna let everyone go first. You wanna go in? Can I have a seat? Oh, it's got it. Can I get you? Right in there. You wanna get in really close? If we can do layers, it works a bit better there. Okay, big smiles, everyone. Perfect. I'm gonna do one more. Awesome, thank you.
And we are now on item 4.3. This delegation has been withdrawn and the delegate will not be heard this evening. We now move on to question period, and we will now receive the remaining questions for submissions. Clerk Ainsworth, has there been any submissions received?
Thank you. Brandon Rael Amiat has registered to make an in-person submission, who resides at 328 Edge Hill Drive. Brandon, if you could please approach.
Welcome.
Thank you. So as you heard, my name is Brandon. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm here tonight to show my support for the students of EDHS Gender and Sexual Diversity Club as they work toward a rainbow crosswalk here in Springwater. I also want to speak strongly in support of the public library and their programming around Drag Queen Storytime and 2S LGBTQI inclusion. I grew up in Midhurst. I was involved in the United Church's effort to become an affirming congregation before it closed, and I was the president of Simcoe Pride when this council changed its bylaws to allow proclamations and flag raisings. The sad reality is that I have to be here again today because our community is still under threat, and I have a responsibility to speak up, as all of us do, when we are under threat. Statistics Canada recently reported a 64% rise in crimes against the 2S LGBT community, and almost half of reported hate crimes are violent. Dozens of drag queen story times, including here in Simcoe County, have been under threat, have been canceled, have been moved, and states in the United States of America are actively rolling back trans rights and banning drag, and also taking attacks on public libraries. These events, thankfully, have prompted some into action, and here in Ontario, MPP Kristen Wontam has tabled Bill 94, which aims to create safety zones around community events such as drag story times. I'm sad to say that we are not immune. The public library had to cancel its presentation tonight because of safety concerns. And unfortunately, with this being a growing trend, I don't think this will end tonight. I don't think it'll end at next meeting. I don't think it'll end anytime soon. So I'm here to ask, what are you all going to do in response? How will you continue to show support for the 2S LGBTQI community? I can't stress enough how public shows of support like tonight matter. Helping students make that crosswalk happen, ensuring the library can continue its drag story time are all good starts. But I'd ask you to go a bit further. I would ask that this council pass a resolution adopting the creation of a letter to the province and to local MPPs urging their support of Bill 94. And whatever you do, I hope Springwater Township steps up just like it did 5 years ago when it adopted the first proclamation of Simcoe Pride. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. That's got to be more than 5 years ago. I think that was in my first term. But anyway, long time you've been around. Thank you for always coming back and being here with us. So I do need to have a motion from council to no, I don't. This is not a delegation question. My apologies. So thank you very much for being here this evening. And I have made a note for Bill 94. Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public or the gallery this evening? And seeing none, I will move on to item number 6, which is the adoption of the minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council, councillors Fisher and Thompson? That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. The minutes of the regular meeting of council of April 5th, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes, council? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that is approved. Moving on to item number 7, may I have a mover and seconder for the, 7.1. May I have a mover and seconder for the Integrity Commissioner Service Report? Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood. And the motion before council is that the report from the Manager of Legislative Services Clerk regarding Integrity Commissioner Services dated April 19th, 2023 be received. And that option 1, that council hereby wishes to renew the agreement with Robert J. Swayze for Integrity Commissioner Services for a 4-year term commencing September 15th, 2023, and that a bylaw be approved, the agreement be presented to the future meeting for consideration. Or option number 2, that staff be redirected to issue an RFP for the Integrity Commissioner Services for a 4-year term commencing on September 15th, 2023, and that council hereby approve the scope of the RFP as outlined in the report. And further, that the notice be approved by Robert Swayze of a non-renewal of the agreement for the Integrity Commissioner Services effective September 14th, 2023. Council, is there any comments or questions? And we will go to Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Having been here when it was first implemented and having seen the change to Mr. Swayze, I'm a little bit reluctant to go out to market again with an RFP. It does take a bit of time, and I think Mr. Swayze has served us fairly well. You know, the new code of conduct is far less cumbersome than the one we had before, but speaks to the areas that need to be spoken to. I also noted in the agreement portion that there's a 30-day opportunity for cancellation of, and I just want to, through you, go to CEO Schmidt, or should I be going to Clerk Ainsworth to make sure that that's the case, because it does give us a window of opportunity down the road if we become dissatisfied to terminate the contract.
Thank you. Now go to Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Thank you. Yes, that's correct. There is a 30-day termination clause on both sides, from the township and from Mr. Swayze. That is in the current contract, and Mr. Swayze has agreed that those terms and conditions would extend to a renewed contract should council decide to go that way.
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I also was actually pleased, I'm going to use the word pleased, that Mr. Swayze actually was more interested in remote meetings, because we know that in previous, with the previous Integrity Commissioner, their attendance can be very, very expensive. So the fact that Mr. Swayze is open to supplying his services remotely, I think that actually will save township a substantial amount of money. So I'm in favor of option 1, but certainly willing to hear any other councillors' views.
Mr. Davis is taking my check. You guys look at that. Sorry, I saw that. My apologies. Yes. So I do have Deputy Cabral speaking in favor of moving option number 1. If there is any further discussion, we can ask for a seconder for option number 1. We have Councillor Moore seconding option number 1. Council, is there any further discussion? And seeing none, option number 1, that council hereby wishes to renew the agreement with Robert J. Swayze of Integrity Commissioner Services for a 4-year term commencing September 15th, 2023, and that a bylaw to approve the agreement be presented at a future meeting for consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on to item 8, our action items. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the action reports? Councillors Moore and Garwood. That actions items 8.2 to 8.9 be received and that recommendations contained therein be approved. 8.2 has been removed, our fees and charges, parks and recreation user fees. We have 8.3, our community strategic plan. 8.4, repealing our COVID-19 mandatory vaccination policy. 8.5, our winter maintenance options for Old Second South beyond Sutton Heights. 8.6, award tender for the 2023-02 ISO side in water tank brine applicator. 8.7 is a SU 2015-002, our PGC industrial subdivision request for extension of draft plan approval. 8.8 is our consent agreement and execution for the First Elms Holdings on the Old Second South in Midhurst. And 8.9 is a zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023-006 Rivera Long-Term Care Incorporated 27 Simcoe Street. Council, if there's any comment on any, we can take them as such. If there's any redirection, we can pull the items. Council, is there any items you wish to have pull and redirected? We have a Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Just your microphone, please, Councillor Fisher.
Apologies. I'd actually like to pull and possibly defer the winter maintenance on Old Second until a later date.
Any other items to be pulled? And seeing none, is there any comment or question on any of the remaining items? So at this time, council, we are approving 8.3, 8.4, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, and 8.9, with the exception of 8.5 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? And that has carried. I will now go back to 8.5, to which I have a mover of Councillor Fisher and a seconder. Need a seconder to get it on the floor. Deputy Cabral. So we'll move to our winter maintenance options for Old Second South Sutton Heights. Councillor Fisher.
I would like to see financial options for what it would take to actually grade that hill down. I don't know if it would end up being quite expensive. I know there are some restrictions with the NVCA. However, I'd like to explore those options before we make a final decision to move forward. Thank you.
I'll turn to GM Ramdeo if there's any information at this time. GM Ramdeo.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher and all of council. In addition to the NVCA, there is a Trans-Canada pipeline on the top of the hill. So any regrade of that, anything within 30 meters of that Trans-Canada pipeline, which includes half the hill, would require their approval and likely require their relocation of that pipeline. So the process for that will be extensive. We would have to bear the cost of that as a municipality, or if we choose to go to a local servicing, a local improvement, the residents that will benefit from it will likely have to bear that cost. So that would be part of it. And I think that will be the greatest portion of the cost of any future project. I do not have that cost at this point in time.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Fisher for follow-on and back to Deputy Cabral.
I would like to explore the possibility of what actual cost would be. As you said, we don't have it right now. It is a possibility that that pipe would have to be moved, but it's only a possibility. It's something I'd like to explore for the residents in the area, going down there. I know that driving there in the winter is more difficult. Garbage services are very difficult, but maybe more importantly, emergency vehicles gaining access to that area are. Again, if the cost is exorbitant and not possible, that's up for further debate. However, if it's something that can be done, I would like to explore the financial implications of what they are.
Thank you. And just for clarification, then this is not being deferred to a later meeting. This is being referred to staff for further information, correct?
Correct. I think that's the best way to tackle it.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Manager Ramdale. I guess my question would be whether or not you've had opportunity or staff have had opportunity to see whether or not it might be feasible, maybe even more economical to contract this particular snow removal out. I know we do contract some lots out, in particular, a couple of the fire department lots, I believe, and a few other areas. So I'm just curious to know whether or not there's an opportunity to explore the potential for having it contracted and whether or not that would be something that would be in township's best interests, or whether we should simply go with staff doing it just on an economical scale.
GM Ramdale?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral. We did not investigate what it would cost us to contract it out. The challenges that we face in terms of equipment, being able to go down but unable to ascend back up the hill, would be similar challenges that a contractor would face. They use similar equipment, similar conditions, similar everything. And I think it would come down to exactly what we are proposing, which is to use a 4x4 pickup truck, which we hope because it's a 4x4, we'll be able to make it back up the hill. In terms of cost, because we do own all of the equipment, we have got the staff we've got the staff. Our incremental cost to do that will be minimal. Everything is there. If we were to contract it out, we would be paying for all of those costs.
Thank you, GM Ramdale. I will go to Councillor Fisher and then the rest of council before we vote on the referral.
Again, I believe we'd be voting without knowing the actual costs of what grading would be. I know that if we were to have the regular trucks plowing snow and then the additional 4x4 truck and driver, we're definitely going to incur, although we already own the vehicle, we will incur costs. So I would like to have the full assessment of what it would cost and potential to grade that down if we were not moving the pipe. So again, I'd like to explore those options.
Yes, and for clarification, it would be voting on your referral, not the vote as it stands, as you did pull it. So this council, the vote that I'm calling is to refer this back to staff. And Clerk Ainsworth, do you have wording for the motion before us?
Thank you. I might need clarification from GM Ramdeo on wording, but the draft states that the motion now before council be referred to staff to report back on the cost implications for grading of the road. I just need clarification if grading of the road is the appropriate verbiage.
Manager Ramdeo?
Through you to Clerk Ainsworth. No, it wouldn't be grading of the road. It would be reconstruction of the road to lower the slope from the existing to one that it would be 6%.
Reconstruction of the road to a 6% slope. Fantastic. Thank you, GM Ramdeo. So council, we do have a recommendation before us. That the motion now before council be referred to staff to report back on the implications of reconstruction of the road for a 6% slope. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Council, we're now moving on to item 9. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the information report, sorry. Councillor Moore and Garwood, that the report items listed herein be received for information. We have 1, our bylaw monthly service report for March of 2023. Council, is there any questions or comments on this report? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to our verbal reports, and I will go to General Manager Ramdeo again for development update status, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to all of council. This evening, I'll just focus on the mixed subdivision in Midhurst. As of last week, approximately 65 homes. The developer has closed on approximately 65 homes, so we've got theoretically 65 new families in that community. In conversation with the developer, we are focusing on getting the landscaping done in time for the summer, so that those homeowners will have access to the park and other landscape areas within the community. Our target right now is for the middle of June to the end of June to have that completed, so that the young families can have access to it when the school closes. And that's it for my update for this evening.
Thank you, GM Ramdeo. And I'll just go to Councillor Moore for a question here.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to General Manager Ramdeo. Just a question: with the warm weather coming and the dry season coming, who will be responsible for road watering? Because dust is going to be a problem for all those new homeowners. There's a lot of construction.
GM Ramdeo.
Thank you. Through you again, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. It will be the developer. The plan is for at the end of every business day. So right now, because there's some ice and it's colder, it will be scraped and swept as best as possible at the end of every business day. Once the weather warms up, it will be scraped and it will be flushed at the end of every business day to control that dust.
Thank you, GM Ramdeo. At this time, I can move to Deputy Mayor Cabral for his county update.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. County update, the one I'd like to share with everyone on council actually deals with counties just about at the stage where they're going to be building a rather significant, I guess some of it's going to be rent geared to income, some of it's going to be social housing, and some of it will also be market value or percentage thereof. If you're familiar with the city of Barrie, the Rose Street ramp, where the old OPP station used to be with a large tower there, they're proposing, I think, 2 towers in the neighborhood of 12 stories high with a parking building as well. I think the total amount for the project was in the neighborhood of $78 million. And they're looking at hopefully crossing a few T's and dotting a few I's, and hopefully get an opportunity to move forward on this project. They're just fine tuning the final design. So that was presented. So that's probably the main thing that was brought forward. There was good interest for us because it means there might be some residents in Springwater that might find accommodation there. Although we'd be losing them, they would probably find more affordable and more modern accommodation there. It's also important to note that there's approximately 68 rent geared to income homes that are currently in place within the city of Barrie, and that the folks in there are identified as taking the first 68 spots in this new complex. So something to look forward to down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll move to council for any municipal updates. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few things I wanted to mention. This past Monday, I had the opportunity to attend the Elmville Active Seniors Residence Town Hall at the Elmville Community Hall. There was probably roughly 100 folks in attendance, which was quite exciting to see. Obviously, for many years, the Elms Group, the not-for-profit group, has been working hard towards the future of that site. It was quite neat to see a 3D tour of the proposed buildings, the different suites, and just chat with a lot of residents in the Elmville community that are quite excited about the future of the Elms project. So I wanted to give a bit of a shout out to that group for their hard work and volunteer efforts. The next event I wanted to mention is, of course, the Elmville Maple Syrup Festival, which is taking place next Saturday, April the 29th, within the Elmville community. I know many of us are excited to see the festival back again after a few years, having also been a member of the committee, I wanted to thank all of the incredible volunteers that support that festival each year. Without it's not a big group, but they work very hard. And the next thing I wanted to mention is the fourth meeting of the Annabelle CRA is taking place on May the 15th. Our CRA has been receiving lots of traction. Roughly around 20 folks are attending each meeting. So if you're interested in the Annabelle CRA, May the 15th, come on out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Would like to recognize the Anton Mills CRA and volunteers for a really successful rabbit run and Easter egg hunt on April the 8th. We had over 125 runners in the rabbit run, most of which were kids, and it was another very successful community event, and want to thank them. Also want to recognize our wonderful library staff here tonight, and thank you for all the wonderful and great work that you do, and remind everybody that the library funded or fundraised over $80,000 last year, and you're to be commended for that. And we have a fundraiser coming up at the Maple Syrup Festival in Elmville, the Maple Syrup book sale. We invite everybody to come out and buy lots of books so we can run amazing programs at our library. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? For our log sawing competition this year, we do have 13 people registered, 13 delegates or politicians. I don't know how there's 13. I didn't ask for the details on who's sawing by themselves on both ends, but if there are members of council that are looking to participate, log sawing, yes. So if members of council haven't reached out to Ms. Westlake, if they would just indicate, and Councillor Garwood, you are, it's my turn. Also, I believe Councillor Garwood is going to tell you that they're looking for volunteers at the pancake breakfast. So if any of us have time to spare on that day and we want to help serve, I'll let Councillor Garwood elaborate on that.
Absolutely. So again, if folks are interested in volunteering in the Pancake House, while I'm not the individual that operates that or organizes that, but I can provide the contact information. And also, you guys better watch out because Councillor Fisher and we have practice with this log sawing competition. So you'll have to see what happens. Come on out and check it out.
All right, thank you. Are there any other updates? You got nothing?
Oh, yeah, watch us.
Who's your partner? Oh, this is gonna be good. All right. All right. We do have a notice of motion this evening. Actually, two of them. We have one presented by Councillor Thompson. I will move to Councillor Thompson after I have a seconder for his. I have Councillor Garwood, and I will turn to Councillor Thompson to read his motion.
Whereas council received a delegation from the Fire Marquee at its meeting on April 5th, 2023, and whereas services provided by Fire Marquee could be provided additional revenue for the Springwater Fire and Emergency Services Department by invoicing insurance companies for fire suppression services rendered by the department. Be it therefore resolved that staff be directed to prepare a report outlining how the program would operate and the potential benefits, drawbacks of Fire Marquee services for the township of Springwater.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Council, is there any further or any discussion, comments, or questions? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And reading it over, I would think that this might be appropriate. I do have a number of concerns with respect to this. I almost kind of think to myself, this would be Springwater Fire Department services doing all the work, gathering all the information, and then providing a document to Fire Marquee, who would then submit it to an insurance company, and they're not going to do it for free. So that's my one concern is what would their fee be? I also am a little bit concerned about this happening wherein that it's not always the homeowner that would actually be phoning the fire department to come to their house. Yet it will be the homeowner that will be responsible for the fire call and the fees payable. So that causes me some concern. And I also have to say that I don't know about everybody else, but when it comes to car insurance, I don't know so much about home insurance, but if you do make claims, next time you go to get your policy, sometimes things go up. So some folks are a little bit reluctant to make the claim. And this kind of circumvents that whole process because they won't really know that it's happening, I don't think. And that's what the information will be used for. I also found it kind of strange that it didn't matter what the coverage was for. Whatever the coverage was for was going to satisfy the call out for the fire department. And then I asked the question, what about some folks, I'm sure they're out there because we've heard of them before, who don't have insurance? And then the response was, well, they wouldn't have to pay. The other concern I had is that there's no other bylaw or fee or permit, not permit fee, but bylaw directing a fee. I would suggest under penalty per se if they didn't comply, where someone is directing the fee money or the compensation money to go to a particular area. So I also saw that as a bit of a problem where Fire Marquee would be determining and directing that the monies that were recouped could only be used in a certain area. That should be something that township should be determining. So these are just some of my concerns with it. And it sounds great on the face. But like everything, somebody's going to make a few dollars off of it. And I have to question whether or not it's always going to be in the best interests of our residents, especially given the fact that some fire department services may show up that the person who now is going to be providing the information didn't ask for, didn't call for, even for something like as simple as maybe a barbecue fire or grass fire that they were getting under control on their own. So just kind of staff's going to take that kind of stuff into consideration. I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Cabral, I've spoken to Chief Kirk. He's in favor of this, and I think a staff report would answer all those concerns and questions.
Thank you, Council. So we do have the motion before us. If there's any further question or comment pertaining to this? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Next, we have a notice of motion from Deputy Cabral, and this notice is regarding the temporary outdoor patios. And if I can have Deputy Cabral's seconder, please. It'll be Councillor Garwood, and I will turn now to Deputy Cabral for his motion.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'll just read it out. It's rather lengthy, so I do apologize. Whereas a significant number of Ontario municipalities continue post-pandemic to embrace temporary street side patios by recognizing they have been demonstrated to provide a positive economic and social impact and opportunity for those residents still reluctant to dine indoors at restaurants, and whereas these side street patios offer a significant enhancement to communities by prioritizing people and lifestyle to provide people with more places to be, to gather, to eat, to socialize, and enjoy the vitality and ambience this outdoor social aspect presents, while also serving to further support our local economy. And whereas there exist businesses within Springwater, a large percentage of which are ma and pa type establishments locally owned and operated, immediately adjacent to public thoroughfares, who are engaged in the provision of prepared food and beverages, and who may benefit from the additional opportunities that a street side patio may bring. And whereas Springwater desires to support our local restaurants and cafes by permitting those with property adjacent to township roads the ability to temporarily erect a street side patio to complement commerce that would typically take place within a bricks and mortar setting. And be it resolved that staff be directed to provide a report to council outlining options that would permit the creation of temporary street side patios, and further that the report include a draft policy / bylaw addressing but not limited to application guidelines, patio design guidelines, prioritizing guest and pedestrian safety, public health requirements, township liability indemnification, beverage alcohol permits if applicable, fee structure respecting application and rental of public space, consideration allowing the provision of heat source bracket propane option, ensure accessibility to those who use wheelchairs, mobility scooters, and other mobility devices, fire safety and access to municipal services, and further that staff endeavor to provide the report along with options at the June 7th, 2023 regular meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Caprell. Council, are there any comments or questions on this motion? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, and really just a comment. I wanted to mention that I completely agree with this motion and feel that the temporary outdoor patio option for dining establishments across Springwater would be a huge benefit for the community and definitely boost our local businesses. I know many Elmvale restaurants and dining establishments will be extremely excited about this, and I wanted to thank the Deputy Mayor for including me in the conversation.
I was actually going to say everything that Councillor Garwood just said, so I'll save the time.
Thank you. Council, all those in favor? And that motion has carried. We will now move on to items for future, no, sorry, are there any other notices of motion? And seeing none, are there any items for future consideration? And seeing none, I'll move on to the bylaws, and we have removed the first two bylaws. May I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the bylaw? Deputy Cabral and Councillor Moore, that the bylaws listed be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Bylaws 5000-369 ZB 2023-006 Rivera Long-Term Care Incorporated. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried, and I'll move on to the confirmation bylaw. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillors Fisher and Garwood, that bylaw 2023-042 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council of the regular meeting held on April 19th, 2023, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for adjournment, please? Councillors Thompson and Moore, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:34 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on May 3rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us